Topic of the lecture today here in Salzburg is public space, and talk about it because so many projects are quite nicely thought out, but often very badly perform in terms of the environment where they are positioned. And we have in our practice a huge focus on the quality of the project together working with the space around it. So I just explain city is for us sort of the biggest of the cultural achievements, at least some cities, and the birth of a city as such is something that we don't usually assist. The cities we like most are usually cities that are grown and that have evolved through a long period. And therefore here, this project for the birthplace of Hamburg, the Hammerfeste Hammerburg, which we have developed out of this idea of a crossing line of two main roads, which in fact in the Roman town plan survived in many cities throughout Europe and also over the European context. Also in our language, this idea is remaining with the words quarter, das Quartier, le quartier, which is sort of the basic elements of the town, the four parts. And here in this case, for the new main library in Hamburg, the focus point is the center, the agora as the Greek called it, or the piazza like the Italian call it, or whatever you call it today. But it still has the same function of gathering and things happening in the focus being surrounded by the components of the town. Now, when we go into our local context here, territory is another very important aspect we have to see. In this case here, there was a castle once in Hagenberg near Linz, and today the sprawl has developed all around, which is typical for that kind of agglomerations. And when we went there to build a new University of Applied Sciences building there, the only building we could really find that had a context was the existing farm building of the old Sirs of Hagenberg, away from the castle, which is a Renaissance building, and we decided to serve us as a copy for our new university building in order to not enhance the sprawl, but to sort of calm down and focus and develop next one, please. So, too fast. So we did, instead of bringing in something new, we sort of copied the best existing place, the old four-sided court, and put it as a second element there, and put it in the position where the main pathways through this territory intersect, in order to go with the elements and not against the elements, in order to find the place where things could happen and to make them happen there. So the difference of the old building, of course, we chose some differences. We elevated it a little bit, and by these means allowed a high permeability from the inside to the outside, thus creating a huge connectivity between what happens in the building, what happens in the village, what happens in the buildings around, and creating this center here where both the influence of the local natural context and the influence of modern things happening there focus in this courtyard to make some sort of public focus there. A place was immediately used. The opening ceremony was accompanied by an open-air mass, and a lot of even less religious things are happening there today. So what is always the challenge here in art and in architecture is the inside and the outside is something that is really obsessing our minds when we think about the relation between the identity of the building and the identity of the city surrounding it. But another thing I wanted to introduce is that architecture on the right side of the slide for a long time has been something always thought out as a construction, building up things in a nice way, and therefore not really separating the inside and the outside. But we think today that there are reasons and means to think about the space before you think about the construction and the way how to build it, which was in old times only perceivable in a really mean way, like shows the left slide. We started a project in the mid of the 90s for Berlin with exactly this approach. We said, when creating the design for the Nordic embassies, 5 embassies, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, and Finland in Berlin on an empty plot, we do not start from the idea what is a nice house, but we start from the idea what is a nice space between the houses. And we call it void. And therefore, instead of designing buildings, we filled up the whole plot with a sort of a cake, a sort of a building mass, and started working into that, designing the space between or inside the mass, and thus, by creating the void, separating the 5 embassies and creating this ensemble of 6 buildings rather, with a common building around something which is the core. The core is the void. And the void, here it's surrounded by an additional element, the copper band, that helps to sort of bind the 5 embassies to the Nordic embassies. Instead of an addition, it's a whole that is put forward as an idea. And today that's one of the last models. Then to make this really tangible, the treatment of the facades, of course, is a central issue in architecture, because it's always the degree of transparency between inside and outside that gives the space inside and the space outside the right value and the right degree of openness and communication between the systems. At night, my favorite hour, the blue hour, where things really come to a climax when it's in terms of the permeability of light, inside light, outside light, and the ready building in the Berlin context opened 10 years ago. Now these experiences of creating identity throughout a compound of buildings is something that is extremely important for creating something that has the capacity to become a living part of a city and to become a living address where people really have an idea what it is and where it is. I'm quite proud that in Berlin you can say to any taxi driver, go to the Nordic embassies, and he will drive you there without further instructions. So we hope that similar things will happen here in Salzburg soon. This is a project for a compound of medical and educational facilities in Lehen, quite a central part, one of the last main free building spaces in the city that has been developed very carefully by the town, and we were successful in winning this competition. Now, the idea of Salzburg's identity, which we want to bring into this project, is the wonderful hillscape, together with the roofscape of the old town, as a topic of high identity and high recognition in the town. But since laboratory buildings are usually crowned by machines, we decided that eventually it was a good idea to inverse this system. Here's the building spot, and the marked area here, it's the laboratory building, 6 buildings, which in the development we worked on, similar to the Berlin project, as a total which we craved and worked into and under it in order to develop the idea of a landscape, continuous landscape throughout the building compound, which would enable this compound to be a living ensemble at the ground floor level, at the level where people are, a public place for everybody around. And on the floating over this ensemble, the laboratories, the seminar rooms, and all these facilities from the Paracelsus University up to private laboratories and research facilities. We have, the clock disappeared, that's very bothering. So the project is defined as a superposition of the idea of landscape, continuous landscape throughout the territory of this project, and this is superposed by this idea of the three-dimensional landscape, which we intersected with the buildings floating on top of it and creating this kind of townscape now, where the ground floor level really emerges as something socially active, active in terms of communication and of activities, and also in the programming of the buildings we focus very much on the positioning of socially or communicationally active functions in the ground floor and bringing all the more closed functions, workrooms to the upper floors. And we hope that there will be an integration with the surrounding housing areas. Now I come to the last project here in this sequence. When I focus on this aspect of the public space, of course, this is only one focus, but I hope you understand that it's not possible to dig deeper into the projects in this short speech. When I talk about the European town, there was an innovation in the Renaissance town in Italy that was absolutely ingenious. Somebody found out that it was good enough to have a piece of an arcade to play the full power of the ancient arcade, because long arcades usually are more or less interesting. They go along and then they are emptied and there is something. And so in Florence and other Italian towns, suddenly they said, okay, why not build just a piece of an arcade and let it happen there? So for us, the loggia, so-called loggia, is became really the archetype of something that is very useful in public space, which is to provide from the private side something that is open and it's public, at the same time it's private. We call it semi-private, semi-public, and that allows for bypassers as well as for the owners of the house to unfold activities in this area. Now, when we did the design for the new ice rink in Vienna, we sort of put this idea of a loggia in front in order to organize the relation of the building towards the public space, and in order to create a subsequent going into the building and getting out of the building with all these intermediate space, allowing people to gather in the fresh air, eventually to smoke, which is very important, and to communicate, and at the same time, during the daytime, here's a typical situation at nighttime when things happen in the building. So this loggia is perfectly functioning as an extension of the inside space during the matches and during activity of the building. And also you can see that in the treatment of the facades and of the transparency, we took care that what happens inside is tangible and visible from outside. So it's not the type of enclosed arena, black box, where outside is a parking and inside is something. But no, it's something that is integrated in the town and that makes people curious to go inside. And even when you're inside, makes you understand that you are in Vienna and not somewhere in the desert. And so this idea of continuous integration of outside and inside space also was handled in the design of the stands and of the inside of the stadium, avoiding barriers, visual barriers, and allowing a system where sort of the action becomes part of the town. You progressively approach the action, and you still are visually in contact with the outside world, when at the same time you're already getting in contact with the things happening on the ice rink. Of course, this is a summertime event, so it's daylight outside. Usually the matches are rather at nighttime, but the function is the same. The connection between the spaces is the same. So we provide today the biggest hockey arena in Austria, most up to date with facilities to perform really high level hockey and other systems, and at the same time all the facilities needed today, like VIP and Golden Club and all these things that make sport events today attractive, and at the same time an economic system. There are 2 other ice rinks in the compound, but I don't talk about them today. It's too short a time, but here to finish with, show an image of the situation we created between the 3 ice rinks. So on the right hand, it's a small training facility. Right ahead is the main hockey arena with 7,000 places, and on the left side is the 3rd arena for up to 3,000 guests with gastronomy. And the way how we put them together is, in our idea, creating something like an urban situation between these buildings that is able to develop together with gastronomy and happening something like a social life also in these kind of really tough areas, and that is able to make a link between the building and the town and the people living around this area. So thank you for your attention.